So we have
Okay.
Michael Gould today in nomination for the best screenplay of the year for Sacred Son.
Wow.
Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for submitting the script. So, what made you go into films?
Um, well, it's one of those things you get given the mind you have. So mine was very much imagination-y. And as one poet put it, I think it was one of the Liverpool poets, he dedicated his book to all the kids who looked out the window at school. And that was very much me. I associated with that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I'm the guy who looked out the window at school, always a dreamer. I was okay at school. I wasn't brilliant. And there was a sort of delay factor in it all because, you don't, there's no, back in the 70s in Britain, nobody went into film. It just didn't happen. If anything, they wanted to go into TV. And TV was inaccessible. There was no form you filled out to go into TV. You had to know people, or you had to be very clever from one of the elite universities. And even then, you sort of went in sideways to something organizational and had to perhaps apply to be a producer or something. So it was all very formal. The other way was to get a job in a canteen at one of the big studios, and maybe you could do that, or do a course in English with drama. There was always a roundabout thing that in the end it was like, oh, it was just tiring. So I went to university like everyone else who went to university. Not everyone did. Some went out to work and so on. Of course, when you've done all that, um, film school. There were no film schools in Britain. There was maybe the London Film School, but no one ever talked about that. And even if they had done, there would have been a queue, because in Britain there are always queues about something or other that people want. And they would have wanted to know what background you had that justified you going to a film school. Zero. I went through school. So it's like a catapult that gets pulled out and pulled out and pulled out, and you've got no way out. So I went for an oil company in South America because I was born there. My father was working out there, and then I got back to Britain and I worked for a bank. I swore I'd never go back into offices, but I did. You have no choice. And then in the end, I just left. And my girlfriend at the time was paying the bills. When I started, she said, just go and write. So there was nothing else to do. I mean, I didn't know my way around a camera. I still don't really that much. I rely on other people. I made a short film. And it just went along that road piecemeal. I started writing children's stories, in fact, which didn't really work out. That I sent them away to be, to get some feedback. And they were quite dismissive about the stories, except for one, which was a comedy, and everyone was finding the dialogue very funny. So that worked out. I started to go along that thread that I could write dialogue.
So you can write in a lot of different genre, I think, like in a lot of different styles, in both comedies and horror.
Yeah. I didn't think in terms of genre or anything like that. I barely knew what the word meant, to be honest. I never read as a child, couldn't spell particularly. And I read very slowly. So it was never an escape for me as it was for other people. I was pure daydream. Really, that's where this all comes from. But then I started to write what eventually became Sacred Son. There was a bit of a crisis of, what am I going to do? And I just sat down one day and escaped. We were living in a tiny little house at the time. We were looking to buy somewhere. So we were renting. and my wife went out to work. So I'm sitting there. It's lunchtime on a dull Monday. I've got an Amstrad computer word processor in front of me, and I just escaped. You know, what do? You just escape from suburbia into the past, and or a place you like to be. That's how I always felt was the number one thing that a good script would have, that the writer was writing it to escape, because people go to the cinema to escape first and foremost before they do anything else. They just want to get away. It's like Scorsese says, show me something I can't see on the high street. You know, it's that sort of thing. So finally, the daydream came in useful. So with Sacred Son, I just went to the woods in my old village in Cheshire and started to see what happened. You know, it's like Paul Simon talked about writing songs. He says, well, you just start with something and see where it takes you. And so you let the thing grow organically. And if you feel it's working, then you keep going. And if you feel it's not working, then you go back to where it was, that kind of thing. So it was always very sort of trial and error with me, and piecemeal, and it starts to come together after a lot of rewrites and intermissions, and you know, there was no plan.
And that's a powerful symbolic script that you wrote. What messages do you want to transmit in general when you write?
Well, messages, I feel, certainly with a script like Sacred Son, are not conscious. You can reflect on them later and say, oh, I think that's what this is about, which I've kind of mentioned in my writer's statement on Film Freeway. But I read a number of books by D.H. Lawrence. The first one was a short story called Sun. And it had quite a powerful effect on me. What effect on me? I liked the story. It was strongly symbolic, to use your word. And then I sort of left it alone for a while. And then when I came back to D.H. Lawrence, I read a book called Studies in Classic American Literature, which was his kind of rant or statement about America, but there was so much more included, particularly about the native and what he calls the ghost of America. You know, it's still there underneath, and it means something. And it will one day come to mean a lot more, but it's all going on underneath. It's not an obvious thing. You can't go and make friends with the native. You can't go and shake hands with the native ghost. It's, as you say, symbolic, which is a very powerful thing when it truly is symbolic. People use the word a lot. I mean, you can't go to a symbol supermarket and come out and say, well, I bought a sextant and an apple, and you know, true symbolism is a mystery, as it should be. So it comes from the back of your mind, a mix of things, you know, and I think it's going in the direction of what D.H. Lawrence was saying, which is that there, at some point there will be a new America where the native and the European will finally be completely have no issue with each other at all, but it comes from the soul. You know, that it's not an education thing. It's just there, and it's getting on with it. Nobody really realizes it's happening. Of course, I like to think that it might be in some way sparked off by a work of art. But a lot of people might be thinking that and doing the same and not knowing they're doing it. So it's always a bit of a mystery. There are no straight messages, but it is along the lines of a new America and a new a change in the new world that really starts to put into place a new consciousness, what he calls a new consciousness, where we are no longer suffering the stresses that we do now. I mean, we see in the world today, everything's chaos and it's getting worse. People are so concerned about money and so on. it would be a more native-led thing where we completely changed our priorities, but not through education, not through right thinking, not even through reflection, nothing like it just happens. So it's a difficult message to talk about. But that's along the lines of what it is. It just gets on with what it's going to do. And if you've written something that is a conduit for it, well, hooray, I would be a very happy man.
We would definitely needs that new consciousness for sure.
Yes, we do.
We hope it happens.
I think it's the only way we could cope with the world. I mean, that, for instance, in Britain, and I know across the world there's so much knife crime, and they're all saying, well, we need to do this and we need to improve communities. And they don't know how to do it. You can't do it by, consciously trying to do something good. It doesn't work. We've got populations that are growing exponentially, and evolution-wise, we can't keep up with them. We can't keep up with that rate. And so we're having to introduce more and more systems to cope, and the systems cause stress. I mean, democracy is a system. We think, oh, democracy is not nice and fair. It's actually not very natural, but it's what we need because nothing's natural anymore. There are too many people. So we need something that completely changes us. So we stop regarding all these things as stressfully important, stop taking life seriously in the way that we used to, and do something that just brings the whole thing down, because it's a complete change of consciousness, the way we look at everything. But as I say, there's no prescription for that. It just has to happen. And that's really what I feel it's about on reflection. I didn't know that when I was writing it. You have a sense of it. You just write because you think, what happens next? And then you write that. And like I said before, if you go astray, then you go back to where it was working. You don't really know what it's about. But that's what makes it dark and exciting.
Well, you're right, and then you realize afterwards what messages you were going to transmit.
Yeah, that's how it felt when I finally sat down to write a writer's statement, because I'd never really contemplated one. I thought, oh, well, I better do this. And it was only then I started to think, I wonder if it isn't true, that this is coming through everything I read, the daydreaming, it all sort of synthesizes into something that becomes a little bit more than the sum of its parts.
And where can we follow you, Michael? Do you have a website?
I don't know. I'm on Film Freeway.
Okay.
You can look me up on Film Freeway. You can get me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's all Michael Gould. I can send you the
link. Yeah, I can always find you as well and put it under the interview, so people can start following you as well. So it's super interesting what you have to say, Michael. So thank you again for being here today with us. So we'll keep you updated for the prizes, and we'll send you the interview probably today or during the weekend, so you can share it with the world afterwards.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you so much.